Independent media is in huge trouble. So, over the last year, you might have noticed that you're not getting any notifications for some of the progressive channels or recommendations to some of the progressive channels that you might have enjoyed or you might continue to enjoy. And instead, finding a lot of MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News clips being recommended to you as well. So now this is a problem that seems to be impacting just news and politics. For example, gaming doesn't seem to be affected. Recommendations work as they should. um, but when it comes to news and politics, well, there are a lot of issues with recommendations, and they've actually had a gigantic impact. Now, this isn't an accident. Back in January of 2019, this year, YouTube had announced $25 million commitment to promote what they call authoritative news. So now that essentially means corporate, MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, The Guardian, basically some of your bigger, more establishment type of news outlets. So more established. So now what's interesting is Fox News is on this list. Fox News is basically a propaganda arm of the Republican Party and currently Donald Trump. And so they are an authoritative source of news. But when it comes to independent left leaning channels, well, I mean, can't be authoritative if you're on the progressive side. So, but look, the of course, you know the reason: advertisers, money, right? And so before this change, before these tweaks to the algorithm that have been happening over the most pronouncedly or most pronounced over the past year, before that, you had independent channels that would outperform MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Now those same channels have lost a majority of their traffic. I mean, me just looking at myself, my own data, because that's the only data I have access to, I went from roughly about 1.5 to 2 million views a month to, over the last few months, about 600,000. Disaster. Now, subs were hit even harder, right? Because now that limits your ability to grow. I went from 2 to 3,000 subs a month on a normal good month, right? To about 2 to 300. Yikes. So that's a disaster. And look, they say, oh no, we're here to solve the fake news problem, right? There's a big problem with fake news and outlets that are spreading propaganda and misinformation, etc. They didn't even solve that problem. In fact, you have right-wing channels that are spewing the same kind of hateful propaganda today. And look, Dave Rubin does really well. Jordan Peterson, he's doing absolutely fine. So a lot of these bigger right-wing channels and establishment channels are actually doing excellent. And so, look, the problem is that smaller lefty channels and to an extent even smaller right-wing channels, smaller conservative / libertarian channels are doing really badly with all of these changes since they're also not authoritative, right? So now, let me give an example of a larger channel that is affected, a lefty channel. That's Secular Talk, Kyle Kalinske. It's about 75% less new subscribers than he had before these changes. That's massive. Huge. Now, lucky for Kyle, he is doing pretty well still. Kyle's a very talented guy. He's got a large base of Patreon support. And again, I've got huge respect for Kyle. We agree on about 99% of things. And so, you know, he does have a larger channel. He does have a better base of support. And he's able to better cope with some of these changes. Myself, not so good. I don't necessarily have that level of support. As of late, about 200 to 600 views on average, about an hour. That's a disaster. Back in September, before these changes really went into effect, 2 to 3,000 an hour, spiking to 6,000. So look, those are terrible numbers. And again, it's all due to most of these algorithm changes. We are not being elevated. Now we are being essentially blacklisted. So that's a problem here. So YouTube has basically turned, with these changes, a thriving community of independent creators into a corporate wasteland, just like television. Now, the thing is, the whole point of YouTube was to eliminate the gatekeepers like they have on television. So, and look, and the reason, of course, that YouTube grew so well is that it allowed people to get an outside perspective on the news of the day instead of what you get from corporate media, which is basically the corporate establishment narrative. Now, again, my videos no longer recommended. I've essentially been blacklisted, kicked off the feed. And so channels like mine are left to wither and die on the vine. And that's, again, disastrous. Now, some people say, well, why don't you find another platform and leave 127,000 people and then start all over again? It's not really feasible, especially when YouTube does not have a competitor that allows you to monetize, a good competitor. And so, again, super disastrous. And so we're all kind of stuck here, unfortunately. But the situation is such where a lot of us have had to ask for support, Patreon. And so we got a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation. If I had a couple hundred more patrons, wouldn't have to worry about it. Show could run in perpetuity. And so that's the issue, right? Because right now, we don't quite have enough support. You guys can actually change that. But here's the thing. That wouldn't, being able to have enough patrons would make it so that we can continue doing content and not having to worry about this. Because at least I could post content still on YouTube, but also on Facebook and Patreon and all the other places that you guys would want to find the content without having to worry about whether or not we've got demonetization or these algorithms blocking us, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, Facebook, if you guys are on Facebook, help us get to 10,000 likes. That would allow us to monetize, run ads on Facebook as well, which would help out quite a bit. But again, the whole point here is that thanks to these algorithm changes driven mostly by advertisers and trying to please advertisers, you have a disaster for independent creators, and it's turning too much into television. So it's imperative to support whatever creators you can. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.